Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here today with my July reading wrap-up. As in June, it was completely a big book summer month. This is the challenge that I host every year, currently celebrating its 10th anniversary. The idea is very simple. A big book is any book with 400 or more pages, any type, any genre, any format. Audiobooks count, ebooks count, graphic novels, middle grade, whatever you like to read. If the print version has 400 or more pages, then it's a big book and it counts for the challenge. And you set your own goals. So some people just choose one big book to read during the summer. And you've got from May through September. So there's still a month left. If you haven't joined yet, there's still time to pick out your big book and join the fun. For me, I usually choose a whole stack of big books off my shelves at the end of May, and then I've got lots of choices during the summer. So July was once again an all big book month, which means I only finished 4 books in total, 2 in print and 2 on audio, but they were all excellent. In fact, the 2 print books definitely made my top books of the year list, and one might just be my best book of the year, even though it's only the beginning of August. We'll see. So we're going to start with that one because it was the first book I read in July, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So this is an interesting book because I can't tell you much about it. I mean, right from the beginning, it is full of surprises, and discovering those things as you're reading is part of the wonderful pleasures that this book has in store. So you may recognize Andy Weir as the author of The Martian. He also wrote a novel called Artemis. Both were excellent. If you read The Martian, you probably know that he has a style that combines science, suspense, and a hefty dose of humor. He's very funny. So this book has all that, but so much more. It is also heartwarming and uplifting, and it is just so unexpected. So I'll just tell you the basic setup from the beginning of the book. A man named Ryland Grace wakes up from what clearly has been a long coma, and he's in some sort of medical room that he can't identify. It's a round-shaped room. His bed is oval and attached to the wall, and once he gets his eyes open, he realizes he's covered with electrodes, and there are tubes going everywhere, IVs and catheter and other tubes. And so he doesn't remember anything, not even his name. But his best guess is that he's been in some kind of medical coma. And there are 2 other beds in the room. So once Ryland gains a little bit of strength and is able to get out of bed, he goes over to check on his 2 roommates and finds that they've both been dead a very long time. Both beds just contain a desiccated mummy. So he's all by himself. And this is the only thing I'll tell you about this story. Ryland is now solely responsible for saving the entire earth and every living thing on it. But he doesn't know that yet. The computer starts quizzing him. So there's these robot arms from the ceiling, again, right in the very first pages, that clearly have been taking care of him while he's been in the coma. And a voice coming from the intercom asking him questions, and he can answer even the slightly more complicated math questions, but he can't answer what his name is. He has no idea where he is or why he's there, or even who he is. So that's the setup. And this is such a remarkable, mind-blowing, unique story that I am dying to tell you what it's really about. But I can't, because that would ruin it. It's best to experience this book as the author intended it, to uncover both the past and the present, as Ryland himself does. So he begins having these very detailed memory flashbacks, but it's just little pieces at a time. So it takes him quite a while to piece together the whole background story of why he's there, who he is, what he's supposed to be doing. And you, as the reader, discovers that along with him. At the same time, he is now living in the present, and things are happening. He's encountering challenges. Luckily, it seems that he's very good at science and math, so he tries to approach each of these challenges that comes up as they happen. But there are some real surprises in store, both for Ryland and for the reader. I can't tell you what the book's about as much as I'm dying to, but I can tell you how it made me feel. It warmed my heart. It's uplifting. It made me feel happy and excited. I was so glad my husband had read it before me, because we were traveling while I was reading it. And each night in the hotel, he would hear me laugh out loud or gasp or say, "Oh my gosh," or something similar. And even though usually he hates to be interrupted while he's reading, he'd put his book down and say, where are you? What's happening? Because it's just such a special book and such a unique and special story. So I can't tell you more about it, but I highly recommend Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And also while on that trip, my husband and I listened to a big book on audio. We haven't been able to travel in a very long time. The trip was to go to Oklahoma for my father-in-law's funeral. He had been living here in Delaware with us in a nursing home. And after he passed away at the end of June, he wanted to be buried in Oklahoma. So we made all the arrangements. We decided to drive. So we had a very long drive, 4 days out there and 4 days back, plus 4 days there. So we haven't been able to travel in a long time because we have been caring for him and didn't want to leave him. So this was, sad circumstances, but also it was kind of nice for us to be out on the road again, even though this was not a vacation and we weren't stopping to see nice things or anything. But along the trip, one of the things we like about road trips is listening to an audiobook together. My husband really likes thrillers, so we chose a psychological thriller, Since We Fell by Dennis Lehane. So this has been in our audio backlog for years, since it came out, I'm going to guess like around 2018. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was one that he and I would enjoy together. And like I said, we haven't been traveling. So we finally had a chance to listen to it. Again, this is going to be true of a lot of books that I read in July. I can only tell you the setup because I don't want to give away any spoilers. And it is a psychological thriller, psychological suspense. So there are lots of spoilers. So I will just tell you the basics. It's about a woman named Rachel, and she's working as a journalist on television. It is her dream to be a TV reporter, and she slowly works her way up to that role. And so she's got her dream job reporting on real news stories for a major news station on television. And then Rachel gets assigned to cover the earthquakes in Haiti. And this story changes her life. She is there in the midst of the disaster among the Haitian people for months at a time. And she does what reporters aren't supposed to do, but is almost impossible not to do in this kind of situation. She really becomes emotionally attached. And she can see the horrible state that Haiti is in. She's also witnessing the violence, the looting, the rapes and murders, and it just really affects her psychologically. So she ends up having a breakdown on the air. She just gets to the point, she's frustrated because the rest of the world isn't paying attention to this horrible thing that's happening. And so Rachel has this on-air breakdown, which is understandable given all that she's been through. So back home in Boston, she becomes a complete shut-in. Her anxiety is just so high. She can't leave the house. She's really struggling. And she runs into this guy that she's known for years, and they really click. And he becomes her husband, and he's basically the ideal husband. All this horrible stuff that Rachel's going through and all these limits on her life now, he's always understanding and supportive and caring. He helps her overcome some of that fear of leaving the house. They begin to take small outings. She begins to heal bit by bit with his help. And that's really all I can tell you, except that things aren't as they seem. And one day, Rachel sees something that kind of brings her life crashing down. And that's where the story goes. As with many Dennis Lehane novels, it's kind of a slow build at the beginning as you get to know the characters and see what they're going through, what in their lives led to the present moment. And then, like the last third of the novel, the pace really speeds up as Rachel begins discovering things around her that she wasn't seeing before or didn't realize. And there's a lot of action in that last third. There is a lot of suspense and a lot of surprising plot twists, things that we didn't see coming. So we really enjoyed Since We Fell by Dennis Lehane on audio, a big book that made the miles fly by. So the third big book I read in July was back in print, Lucky Turtle by Bill Rohrbach. Back in May, I talked about Booktopia, this amazing book event that I go to every year in Vermont in May, although of course it had to be canceled the last 2 years, so this year was a big deal. So I read most of the Booktopia books. It's the bookstore invites a group of authors, usually about 8 authors who have new releases out, usually, but not always new releases. And then there's about 100 readers. And the authors and readers kind of hang out together all weekend. There are author talks, but they're more like interactive book group discussions. It's a lot of fun. So most of the books I read ahead of time so that I could talk about them with the authors. Lucky Turtle had just come out the weekend that Booktopia was being held. So I hadn't had a chance to read it ahead of time, but I picked up a copy at Northshire Bookstore, and I'm so glad I did. I saved it for Big Book Summer because it is over 400 pages, and I loved this book. It's another one that I'm only going to tell you about the setup in the beginning, because part of the delight of this book is letting the story unfold in its own time. So there's a 16-year-old girl named Sindra who lives in a Boston suburb, and Sindra gets in big trouble. She is arrested for armed robbery and assault. Basically, she went along with her older boyfriend and his brother and ended up getting in big trouble. Now, because Cindra's a good student, she's never been in trouble before, her guidance counselor comes to the hearing and speaks up for her. The judge decides on an unusual sentence. The two boys are going to prison and juvenile detention, but Cindra is being sent instead to a reform camp. It's called Camp Challenge. It's located all the way out in the middle of Montana. This very beautiful but very isolated wilderness. And Cindra does like nature and the outdoors, but she gets there and it's a really hard adjustment. She's not allowed to even talk to her parents for the first 6 months. She's not allowed to see them for the full 2 years that she's there. And, she's having trouble adjusting. So there are lots of other girls in the camp. She begins to get to know some of the other girls. But there's also a young man who does the driving for the camp. He drives their van. And Cindra gets put on laundry duty. So she rides alone with this young man into the nearest town to do the laundry. And his name is Lucky. And Cindra and Lucky gradually get to know each other. Now, among the girls in the camp, Lucky's a fairly handsome young man, and there are all kinds of rumors about him. One that he's mute and can't speak. But on the way back from their first trip into town, Cindra finds out that's not true. And his first words to her are pretty startling. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because it is, it's just such a wonderful book to experience as it unfolds. So it covers decades. It's about love. It's about friendship. It's about motherhood. And all of it is set against this gorgeous wilderness backdrop in Montana, but also when Cindra is living other places, she seeks out nature. And nature is extremely important to Lucky because he was brought up in this Montana wilderness. So, but his background remains a mystery for quite some time. I loved this book. It was really beautiful and moving, suspenseful. There's actually a lot of action in it. It kind of has everything. So definitely recommend Lucky Turtle by Bill Rohrbach. And finally, my last big book in July was another audiobook, The Cartographers by Pong Shepard. Now, this is another unusual book. It was a month for unique novels. The book begins with a woman named Nell who's living in New York City. She's a cartographer, a map specialist, someone who creates maps. Now, Nell used to work for the New York Public Library in their map division, which to her was an ideal job. She loves her career. She loved that job. And her father worked there also, and he was a very well-known, very prestigious person in the library, in the map division. And one day when Nell was fairly young, she found this box of old maps and she was going through it. And she showed her dad one of these maps. She was hoping to find something valuable that no one else had found before to kind of make a name for herself. And the library had all kinds of sort of forgotten cartons and boxes and things down in the basement. So she had found this box, she was going through it, and she brings this one map to her dad, and she's like, look what I found in the box in the basement. It's just an old gas station map from 1930. I mean, why would someone have put this down there? It's clearly not got any value. It's just, a road map. And her father basically freaks out he not only gets angry with her and completely cuts off their relationship, but he gets her fired from the New York Public Library, her dream job. So as the novel opens, it's been 7 years since that happened. Nell has not seen or spoken to her father since. She's working for another company now. And one day she's at work and she gets a phone call that her father has been found dead at his desk in the library. So for the first time in 7 years, Nell returns to the library. Everything's in an uproar. Fairly soon, they begin to suspect some sort of foul play. There are some suspicious things going on. As Nell, the next day, is going through her dad's desk, there's a secret compartment that only she and he knew about, and in it, she finds that old folded road map that caused all the trouble between she and her dad. And she can't believe he saved it all these years. First of all, it's just a piece of junk. And secondly, it caused this horrible rift in their lives. Why would he save it? So Nell begins to investigate. And she's got a friend, an old boyfriend, who's also a cartographer, and he gets interested in it as well. And they begin to look into what made this old gas station map so special. Why did her father protect it this way? Their investigation leads to all kinds of unforeseen happenings. In part, Nell, as she's investigating this map, learns more about her own history, her family, long-held secrets in her family. And I don't want to give anything away, but you probably should know there is a bit of magic in this story. So it's mostly set in the real world. I'm not a huge lover of like fantasy set in a whole fantasy world. My older son loves epic fantasies like that. That's not really my thing, but sometimes when there's a real world setting with real people and something fantastical or magical happens, I can go with that. So that's what this book is like. So there are lots of surprises. Like I said, this is another book that I just can't tell you more than the setup, because there are so many twists and turns, so many surprising things that happen. So it's suspenseful. There's a lot of action, especially in the second half. Well, really throughout. It's a mystery, and there is that touch of magic. So that is The Cartographers by Pong Shepherd, and I really enjoyed it. In fact, I really enjoyed all 4 books that I read and listened to last month. They were all big books, 400 or more pages, and all were very surprising in different ways. My favorite, as you could probably tell, Lucky Turtle was amazing. But my favorite, and perhaps my best book of the year, we'll see, is Project Hail Mary. Even though I can't tell you much about it, I highly recommend you read it and discover it for yourself. It's very special. So that was my July reading. It was all big books, and if you haven't joined the challenge yet, there's still time. We've still got a month left of summer. It runs until the first Monday in September, which here in the U.S. is Labor Day. So the information on the challenge is all down below under notes. Just take a look at that. The information on how to sign up for the challenge is there. And I want to hear about your July reading. What was your favorite book read last month?